Ladies and gentlemen, we're happy to present you Great Expectations. And now we have another treat in store for you this evening. Mr. Charles Dickens is with us, the author of Great Expectations. He's on his second tour of the United States, about to complete that tour. He's been having wonderful receptions around the country, and we're very happy to have him with us this evening. Mr. Dickens, who is the author of many novels, does readings of a variety of kinds. He sometimes reads short stories that he's written. He sometimes reads sections from the novels. And thirdly, and perhaps most famously, he reads what he calls fantasias, which are collages of themes and characters from a particular novel, developing a character. This evening, he's going to do one of these fantasias, and it will be from another one of his novels, Bleak House, and it centers on the street Arab Joe. May I present Mr. Charles Dickens.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Very happy to be here this evening. As you have heard, I will be reading from my novel Bleak House, and the title of the reading is Joe. London, Michaelmas term, lately over, implacable November weather, as much mud in the streets as if the waters had but newly retired from the face of the earth. And it would not be wonderful to see a megalosaurus, 40 feet long or so, waddling like an elephantine lizard up Holborn Hill. Smoke lowering down from chimney pots, making a soft black drizzle with flakes of soot in it, as big as full-grown snowflakes, gone into mourning, one might imagine, for the death of the sun. Fog everywhere. Fog up the river where it rolls among green aites and meadows. Fog down the river where it flows defiled among the tiers of shipping and the waterside pollutions of a great and dirty city. Dogs, undistinguishable in mire, horses scarcely better, splashed to the very blinkers. Joe. Joe sweeps his muddy crossing all day long. When asked a question, Joe sums up his mental condition by replying, "I don't know nothing." He knows that it's hard to keep the mud off the crossing in dirty weather. Harder still to live by doing it. Nobody taught him, not even that much. He found it out. Joe lives, that is to say, Joe has not yet died, in a ruinous place known to the like of him as Tom All Alone's. It is a black, dilapidated street, avoided by all decent people, where the crazy houses and tumbling tenements breed a crowd of foul existence that crawls in and out of gaps in walls and boards and coils itself to sleep in maggot numbers where the rain drips in, and comes and goes, fetching and carrying fever and sowing evil in its every footprint. Why it is called Tom All Alone's, nobody knows. Certainly Joe doesn't know. "For I do know," says Joe. "I do know nothing." It must be strange to be like Joe, to be hustled and jostled and moved on, to shuffle through the streets unfamiliar with the shapes and in utter darkness as to the meaning of those mysterious symbols so abundant over the shops and at the corners of streets and on the doors and in the windows, to see people read and to see people write and to see the postmen deliver letters and not to have the least idea of all that language, to be to every scrap of it stone blind and dumb. Joe slouches out of Tom All Alone's, munching his dirty bit of bread. His way lying through many streets, and the houses not yet being open, he sits down to breakfast on the doorstep of the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel in Foreign Parts. He admires the size of the edifice and wonders what it is all about. He has no idea, poor wretch, of the spiritual destitution of a coral reef in the Pacific, or what it costs to save precious souls among distant coconuts and breadfruit. He goes to his crossing and begins to lay it out for the day. The town awakes, the great tea totem is set up for its daily spin and whirl, all that unaccountable reading and writing, which has been suspended for a few hours, recommences. Joe and the other lower animals get on in the unintelligible mess as they can. Mr. and Mrs. Snagsby, in their rooms above the law stationer's shop in Cook's Court, Cursiter Street, have it in contemplation to receive company. The expected company is rather select than numerous, consisting of a certain Mr. Chadband. For Mr. Chadband's being much given to describe himself, both verbally and in writing, as a vessel, he is occasionally mistaken by strangers for a gentleman connected with navigation, but he is, as he expresses it himself, in the ministry, and has his followers, Mrs. Snagsby being one. My little woman, says Mr. Snagsby to the sparrows in Cook's Court, likes to have her religion rather sharp, you see. Guster the slavey prepares the tiny drawing room for tea. All the furniture is shaken and dusted, the best tea service is set forth, and there is excellent provision made of dainty new bread, crusty twists, cool fresh butter, thin slices of ham, tongue, and German sausage, and delicate little rows of anchovies, nestling in parsley, not to mention new-laid eggs to be brought up warm in a napkin, and hot buttered toast. Well, Mr. Chadband is rather a consuming vessel, and can wield such weapons of the flesh as a knife and fork remarkably well. Somewhat behind his hour, Mr. Chadband appears in Cook's Court. That gentleman is a large, pink person with a fat smile, and a general appearance of having a good deal of train oil in his system. He moves softly and cumbrously, not unlike a bear who has been taught to walk upright. And he never speaks without first putting up his great hand as delivering a token to his hearers that he is going to edify them. My friends, Mr. Chadband, peace be on this house, on the master thereof, on the mistress thereof, on the young maidens and on the young men. My friends, why do I wish for peace? What is peace? Is it war? No. Is it strife? No. Is it lovely and gentle and pleasant and serene and joyful? Oh, yes. Therefore, my friends, I wish for peace upon you and upon yours. While Mrs. Snagsby, drawing her breath, looks hard at Mr. Snagsby as who should say, "You hear this, apostle?" Mr. Snagsby thinks it expedient on the whole to murmur, "Amen," which is well received. At this, Mr. Chadband advances upon the tea table, but before taking a chair, again lifts up his admonitory hand. My friends, says he, what is this which we now behold as being spread before us? Refreshment. Why do we need refreshment, my friend? Because we are but mortal, because we are but sinful, because we are but of the earth, because we are not of the air. Can we fly, my friend? We cannot. Why can we not fly, my friend? Is it because we are calculated to walk? It is. Could we walk, my friends, without strength? We could not. What could we do without strength, my friend? Our legs would refuse to bear us. Our knees would double up. Our ankles would turn over, and we should come to the ground. Then from whence, my friends, do we derive the strength that is necessary to our limbs? Is it, says Chadband, glancing over the table, from bread in various forms, from butter which is churned from the milk, which is yielded unto us by the cow, from the eggs which are laid by the fowl, from ham, from tongue, and from sausage, and such like? It is. and let us partake of the good things which are set before us. At which Mr. Chadband sits down at Mr. Snagsby's table and lays about him prodigiously. Some considerable depredation has already been worked upon this feast when Guster the slavey tumbles noisily into the room to announce an inconvenience in the shop below. Mr. Snagsby descends and finds a police constable who holds a ragged boy by the arm. "Why, bless my heart," says Mr. Snagsby, "what's the matter?" "This boy," says the constable, "though he's repeatedly told to, won't move on." "I'm always a-moving on, sir," cries the boy, wiping away his grimy tears with his arm. "I've always been a-moving and a-moving on ever since I was born. Where can I possibly move to, sir, more nor I do move?" "He won't move on," says the constable, calmly, "although repeatedly cautioned." "Oh, my eye, where can I move to?" cries the boy again, clutching quite desperately at his hair and beating his bare feet upon the floor of Mr. Snagsby's shop. The commotion has attracted an audience from the tea table above. Mr. Chadband, dabbing at his oily head with a pocket handkerchief, makes his accustomed signal. Mrs. Snagsby whispers, "Hush." "My friends," Mr. Chadband, "we have partaken in moderation of the comforts which have been provided for us. But, my friends, have we partaken of anything else? We have. My friends, of what else have we partaken? Of spiritual profit? Yes. From whence have we derived that spiritual profit? My young friend, stand forth." Joe's backward slouch is expressive of great alarm. "My young friend," says Chadband, "you are to us a pearl, you are to us a diamond, you are to us a gem, you are to us a jewel. And why, my young friend?" "I dunno," replies Joe. "I dunno nothing." "My young friend," says Chadband, "it is because you know nothing that you are a gem and a jewel. Well, what are you, my young friend? You are a human boy. Oh, glorious to be a human boy. And why glorious, my young friend? Because you are capable of receiving the lessons of wisdom. Because you are capable of profiting from this discourse, which I deliver for your good. My friends," says Chadband, looking around him in conclusion, "I will not proceed with my young friend now. Will you come tomorrow, my young friend, so that I may deliver a discourse unto you? And will you come upon the next day, and upon the next, and upon many pleasant days to hear discoursing?" Joe, whose immediate object seems to be to get away on any terms, gives a shuffling nod. Grateful for once to move on, he moves on through the mud and fog, down to Blackfriars Bridge, where he finds a dismal corner to settle into. And there he sits, looking up, the great cross on the summit of St. Paul's Cathedral. From the boy's face, one might suppose that sacred emblem to be, in his eyes, the crowning confusion, the great confused city, so golden, so high up, so far out of his reach. There he sits, the light fading, the river running fast, the crowd flowing by him in two streams, everything moving on to some purpose and to one end, until he is stirred up and told to move on too. Mr. Tulkinghorn, a rusty, old-fashioned sort of old gentleman attorney, inquires after a certain indigent law writer at his lodgings, receives a candle from the landlord, directions to the second floor. With a nod, Mr. Tulkinghorn goes up the stairs, comes to the dark door on the second floor, knocks, receives no answer, opens it. It's a small room, nearly black with soot and grease and dirt. In the rusty skeleton of a grate, pinched in the middle as if poverty had gripped it, a red coke fire burns low. On a bed opposite the fire, a confusion of dirty patchwork, lean rib ticking and coarse sacking, the lawyer, hesitating just within the doorway, sees a man. He lies there, dressed in shirt and trousers with bare feet. His hair is ragged, mingling with his whiskers and his beard. He has a yellow look in the spectral light of the candle. Hello, my friend, Mr. Tulkinghorn cries, and strikes the iron candlestick against the door. Hello, my friend, cries again. Hello? Hello? He thinks he has awakened his friend. He lies a little turned away, but his eyes are surely open. Raising his candle, the lawyer takes a step into the room. No movement from the bed. Another step. God save us! Cries Mr. Tulkinghorn. He is dead. At the appointed time arrives the coroner. Says the coroner. Is that boy here? Says the beadle. No, sir, he's not here. Says the coroner. Go and fetch him then. Here he is. Very muddy, very hoarse, very ragged. Now, boy. Stop a minute. Caution. This boy must be put through a few preliminary paces. Name? Joe. Nothing else that he knows on. Don't know that everybody has two names. Never heard of such a thing. Don't know that Joe is short for a longer name. Thinks it's long enough for him. He don't find no fault with it. Spell it? No, he can't spell it. No father. No mother. No friends. Never been to school. What's home? Can't exactly say what'll be done to him after he's dead if he tells a lie to the gentleman here, but believes it'll be something very bad to punish him and serve him right too. So he'll tell the truth. This won't do, gentlemen, says the coroner with a melancholy shake of the head. Don't you think you can receive his evidence, sir? Asked the beadle. Out of the question, says the coroner. You've heard the boy. Can't exactly say. That won't do, you know. We can't take that in a court of justice, gentlemen. It's terrible depravity. Put the boy aside. Boy put aside. Boy knows nothing. Only knows that the dead man, whom he recognized just now by his yellow face and black hair, was sometimes hooted and pursued about the streets, that one cold winter night when he, the boy, was shivering in a doorway near his crossing, the man turned to look at him and came back, and having questioned him and found that he had not a friend in the world, said, neither of us, not one, gave him the price of a supper and a night's lodging, that the man had often spoken to him since, and asked him whether he slept sound at night, how he bore the cold and hunger, whether he ever wished to die. But when the man had no money, he would say in passing, I'm as poor as you are today, Joe. But when he had any, he'd always give him some. He was very good to me, says the boy, wiping his eyes with his ragged sleeve. When I see him a-laying so stretched out just now, I wished he could have heard me tell him so. He was very good to me, he was. Among certain ladies of a rapacious benevolence is one Mrs. Pardiggle, a school lady, a visiting lady, a reading lady, a distributing lady, a formidable style of lady with spectacles, a prominent nose, and a remarkably loud voice. This afternoon she is calling on Miss Esther Summerson and Miss Ada Clare, who have received her timidly, for wherever Mrs. Pardiggle goes, she seems to come in like cold weather, and to make the little Pardiggles, who always accompany her, blue as they follow. These young ladies, says Mrs. Pardiggle with great volubility after the first salutations, are my 5 boys. You may have seen their names in a printed subscription list, perhaps more than one. Egbert, my eldest, 12, is the boy who sent out his pocket money to the amount of 5 and 3 to the Tocahoopo Indian. Oswald, my second, 10 and a half, is the child who contributed 2 and 9 to the great national Smithers testimonial. Francis, my third, 9, 1 and 6 halfpenny. Felix, my fourth, 7, 8 to the superannuated widows. Alfred, my youngest, 5, has voluntarily enrolled himself in the infant bonds of joy, and is pledged never through life to use tobacco in any form. no one could imagine more dissatisfied-looking children. It is not merely that they are weazened and shriveled, though they are certainly that too, but they look absolutely ferocious with discontent. At the mention of the Takahupo Indians, for instance, Egbert might easily be taken for one of the most baleful members of that tribe. He gives such a savage frown. "You have been visiting, I understand," says Mrs. Pardiggle to the two young women, "at Mrs. Jellyby's." Mrs. Jellyby is yet another of the benevolent persuasion. "Mrs. Jellyby," Mrs. Pardiggle continues, without waiting for a reply, "is a benefactor to society and deserves a helping hand. My boys have contributed to the African project. Egbert, 1 in 6, being his entire allowance for 9 weeks. Oswald, 1 and a penny halfpenny, being the same. The rest according to their little means." If the dark-visaged eldest boy could look more malicious than he has already looked, this is the time when he does it, furiously doubling his right fist. He delivers a secret blow into the crown of his cap, which is under his left arm. Ah! Miss Summerson and Miss Clare have indeed spent an evening at the Jellyby establishment, Miss Summerson having recorded the experience in her diary. "On our arrival at the house," the entry begins, "we were conducted by a slovenly person in pattens to 2 upper rooms. Excessively bare and disorderly they were, and with a damp, marshy smell. The curtain of one window was fastened up with a fork. Afterwards, the same person, this time without pattens, brought us by another stairway to a back room on the 1st floor. Announcing at the door, 'Them 2 young ladies, Mrs. Jellyby,' passed several children on the way up, whom it was difficult to avoid treading on in the dark. And as we came into Mrs. Jellyby's presence, one of the poor little things fell downstairs, down a whole flight, as it sounded to me, with a great noise. Mrs. Jellyby, whose face reflected no uneasiness, as the dear child's head recorded its passage, with a bump for every stair, Ada counted 7 besides the one for the landing, received us with perfect equanimity. She was a pretty, diminutive, plump woman, of from 40 to 50, with handsome eyes, though they had a curious habit of seeming to look a long way off, as if, and quoting Ada again, they could see nothing nearer than Africa. The room was strewn with papers and nearly filled by a great writing table, covered with similar litter, at which sat a jaded, unhealthy-looking girl, biting the feather of her pen and staring at us. "You find me, my dears," said Mrs. Jellyby, "as usual, very busy, but that you will excuse. The African project at present employs my whole time. It involves me in correspondence with public bodies and with private individuals anxious for the welfare of the needy lambs all over that unfortunate continent. I'm happy to say it is advancing. We hope by this time next year to have 200 English families cultivating coffee, educating the natives of Boreo Bulaga on the left bank of the Niger. If you would like," said Mrs. Jellyby, putting a number of papers toward us, "to look over some of my remarks on the general subject, while I finish a letter I am now dictating to my eldest daughter, I shall then have finished for the present." She smiled sweetly, "though my work is never done. Where are we, child?" "Presents her compliments to Mr. Swallow and begs," said the unhealthy-looking girl. "And begs," said Mrs. Jellyby, dictating, "to inform him, in reference to his letter of—" "No, no, Peepy, not on any account." Peepy was the unfortunate child who had fallen downstairs, who now interrupted the correspondence by presenting himself with a strip of plaster on his forehead, to exhibit his wounded knee, in which Ada and I did not know which to pity most, the bruises or the dirt. Mrs. Jellyby merely added, with the serene composure with which she said everything, "Go along, you naughty people," fixed her fine eyes on Africa again. Alas, Joe, not for you, that far-ranging gaze. You are not one of Mrs. Pardiggle's Takahupo Indians. You are not one of Mrs. Jellyby's lambs, being wholly unconnected with Boreo Bulaga. You are not softened by distance and unfamiliarity. You are not a genuine, foreign-grown savage. You are the ordinary, homemade article. dirty, ugly, disagreeable to all the senses, embody a common creature of the common streets, only in soul a healing. Homely filth begrimes thee, homely parasites devour thee, homely sores are in thee, homely rags are on thee. Native ignorance, the growth of English soil and climate, sinks thy immortal nature lower than the beasts that perish. Stand forth, Joe, in uncompromising color. From the sole of thy foot to the crown of thy head, there is nothing interesting about thee. But now, Joe has, for some weeks, been very ill. Alan Woodcourt, the young doctor, finds him in Tom all alone, huddled in a corner up against a hoarding like a growth of fungus, or any unwholesome excrescence produced there in neglect and impurity. A breakfast stall at the street corner suggests the first thing to be done. What is a dainty repast to Joe is set before him, and he begins to gulp the coffee and to gnaw the bread and butter, looking anxiously about him in all directions as he eats and drinks, like a scared animal. But he is so sick and miserable that even hunger has abandoned him. "I thought I was almost a-starving, sir," says Joe, soon putting down his food. "But I don't know nothing. Not even that. I don't care for eating victuals, nor yet for drinking on 'em." Joe stands shivering and looking at the breakfast wonderingly. Alan Woodcourt lays his hand upon his pulse and on his chest. "Draw breath, Joe." "It draws," says Joe, "as heavy as a cart." He might have added, "and rattles like one too," but he only mutters, "I'm a-moving on, sir." The young doctor settles the boy miraculously in a clean bed, in clean clothes, in a clean room, visits him every day. A week passes, no change. Another week. Joe is in a sleep or a stupor today, and Alan Woodcourt, newly arrived, stands by him, looking upon his wasted form. After a while, he softly seats himself upon the bedside, with his face towards him, and touches his chest and heart. The cart had very nearly given up, but labors on a little more. "Well, Joe, what's the matter? Don't be frightened. I thought," says Joe, who has started and is looking around, "I thought I was in Tom all Alone's again. Ain't there nobody here but you, Mr. Woodcock?" "Nobody. And I ain't took back to Tom all Alone's, am I, sir?" "No." Joe closes his eyes, muttering, "I'm very thankful." After watching him closely a little while, Alan puts his mouth very near his ear, says to him in a low, distinct voice, "Joe, did you ever know a prayer?" "Never know nothing, sir. Not so much as one short prayer. No, sir. Nothing at all. Mr. Chadband, he was a-praying once at Mr. Snagsby's, and I heard him, but he sounded as if he was a-speaking to himself, not to me. He prayed a lot, but I couldn't make out nothing on it. I never knowed what it was all about." It takes him a long time to say this, and few but an experienced and attentive listener could hear, or hearing, understand him. After a short relapse into sleep or stupor, he makes of a sudden a strong effort to get out of bed. "Stay, Joe. What now?" "It's time. It's time for me to go to that there burying ground, sir," he returns with a wild look. "Lie down and tell me. What burying ground, Joe?" "Where they laid him. As was very good to me. Very good to me indeed he was. It's time for me to go down there, to that there burying ground, sir, and ask to be put along with him. He used for to say to me, 'I'm as poor as you today, Joe.' I want to tell him that I'm as poor as him now, and have come there to be laid along with him. By and by, Joe. By and by. They'll have to get the key of the gate before they can take me in, because it's always locked. And there's a step there, as I used for to clean with my broom. It's turned very dark, sir. Is there any lighter coming? It's coming fast, Joe. Fast. The cart is shaken all to pieces. The rugged road is very near its end. Joe, my poor fellow. I hear you, sir, in the dark. But I'm a-groping. Let me catch hold of your hand. Joe, can you say what I say? I'll say anything as you say, sir, for I knows it's good. Our Father. Our Father. Yes, that's very good, sir. Which art in heaven. Art in heaven. Is the light a-coming, sir? It's close at hand. Hallowed be thy name. Hallowed be thy. The light is come on the dark, benighted way. Dead. Dead, your majesty. Dead, my lords and gentlemen. Dead, right reverend and wrong reverends of every order. Dead, men and women, born with heavenly compassion in your hearts, and dying thus around us every day.